The next skill that we're going to work on is the two-handed forehand, and using the two-handed forehand is really the best way to learn how to play tennis, because the tennis stroke is a coordinated motion with the body and the hips as well as the shoulders and the feet. And if you use two hands on the racket, you have to turn your entire body to bring the racket forward. So we need to do three things for a tennis stroke. We need to take the racket back, we need to accelerate the racket, and then we need to decelerate the racket. And we want to do that with our body with what we call a unit turn. So I'm going to go from the ready position. If I'm a one-handed player, this is what it would look like. If I'm in a ready position, then I'm going to turn. I'm going to take my racket back with my offhand. Then I'm going to extend, and then I'm going to accelerate the racket. And then I'm going to decelerate the racket along with a hip turn and a shoulder turn and a pivot. So we have two pivots for the tennis stroke. From the ready position, we're going to pivot, then we're going to bring the racket forward, and then we're going to pivot again, and we're going to be finished net facing. If we don't use two hands, sometimes we get into bad habits of not doing the second pivot. We'll go from the ready position, first pivot, and then we'll just swing. And the issues with that is that if we don't use our body, the racket face closes a lot through contact. Whereas if I bring the racket through with my unit turn, then I can point my strings a lot longer to the target, because the racket is coming along on a bigger axis versus just using your shoulder joint, not using your body. The strings are on and off that runway that we're trying to send the ball down. Just a small little fraction is on and off. Whereas if we use our body and use two hands, so the grip, I like to use my right hand to face the target that I'm trying to hit to. Then I'm going to position my strings where I want to hit to, and then I just lay my hand on the racket right behind this hitting position, and I leave enough space to where I can put 2 or 3 fingers on the bottom. So when we hit two hands, we always want the hitting side hand on the top of the racket. So if I'm right-handed, I'm hitting a forehand, two-hand forehand. I want my right hand on top, left hand on bottom, because I need that extra reach to come around on this side. If I switch and I'm going to hit on the left side of my body, then I'm going to switch. I'm going to put my left hand on top. Now, a couple other things that we need to realize is when we're hitting, we want the racket to naturally lay back with an extended wrist position. Okay, so as I go from the ready position and as I pull forward, I want my wrist to extend slightly, so this part of the racket, the end of the racket, starts more towards contact. And then as I come around to where my contact point would be, which would be off my front foot, then the racket head would come around. I would finish over my shoulder. So the two-hand forehand looks like this. Pivot, swing, pivot. Ready position, pivot, swing, pivot. And during that swing, during that acceleration phase, I had a slight extension of the hand, and that's to keep the racket face going down that runway and sending the ball down my target line. So I've set up my garage door as a tennis target. Now, the blue here at the 36-inch mark, which would be the height above ground for the net, and my target would be in this zone here. And what I want to do is I want to feed in and try to just maintain a rally using a two-hand forehand. Using my hips and my shoulders, take the racket back and send the racket forward. So I should have a little bit of a pivot each time. And I'm paying very good attention to my contact point, trying to focus on getting the ball right off my front foot, as well as keeping the racket on this side of my body, not taking it too far behind me, making contact right here on my front foot, adjusting my feet. want to hit slightly under the equator of the ball to be able to control the ball over net. Adjusting my feet as necessary, moving up, moving back. We want the strike zone between the shoulders and hips. That's the most comfortable height that we can control the racket. We want the strings to face slightly upwards because the ball is bouncing, going up, then it's descending. So we need to hit it slightly on an ascension with a slightly open racket face to get it over that 36-inch net height. So this is motion, the double pivot, pivot back, pivot forward, that we should be working on. So that comes natural. So when we're receiving, we're just naturally pivoting each time. We don't have to wait until the ball bounces. We get in our pivot, so after the ball bounces, we're ready to pivot forwards.